to be so brazen about telling the story about murdering a dog as a child and then just like, I know. Oh my gosh. Hey there, and welcome back to I don't know what the hell I'm doing with my hair, my makeup, my clothes, my accessories when I make these videos, but somehow you guys still love me. Some of you, anyway, and still keep coming back, so thank you for that. Colleen Ballinger. She has been referenced on my channel, I think more in my earlier videos in the comments where some people said that they thought I looked like her, and I would just kind of like say, thanks. But I don't think we've spoken about her directly. Perhaps it's come up in comments, perhaps she's come up in live stream, I'm not sure. But she's kind of been one of those people, at least for the past few years, that I kind of just didn't like and couldn't quite put my finger on why. I really liked Miranda Sings as a character like a decade ago or however long it was, when she was first doing Miranda and I found out about her. I thought the character was really funny and at the time was very fitting. I don't think sketch comedy is really anywhere on YouTube right now in any sense that's successful. That's not the point. The point here is what's going on with Colleen, what my thoughts were on her before all this, what my thoughts have been during all of this drama that's been going on the past week or two, and what my thoughts are going to be after watching this apology. So just to let you know up front, I saw that Colleen posted this apology, or what I'm presuming is going to be an apology, and I hope is going to be an apology. She posted this last night. I saw it this morning. I went to watch it, but decided not to, and not to watch any other reports on it. I'm not sure. I think at least one or two of the drama channels has reported on this that I saw, but I haven't watched any of their videos on this. I think it's best for you guys to see my initial response without any sort of time to like mull it over and kind of outline what I'm gonna say. I think there is some value to a true reaction. And the other part too is that I want you guys to get a chance to see what I think of this, completely unbiased by what other channels are saying about this apology. I've done this before, more or less, where I've spoken on subjects before, seeing what other drama channels are saying. And sometimes what I say complements what they have to say. And sometimes what I have to say is I find out an unpopular opinion. And whether that gets me praise or gets me in trouble, at least you guys know that it is my genuine reaction. So, like I said, I used to like the character Miranda. I used to watch Miranda Sings years ago. A couple years ago, was it like 2 years ago or so, when YouTube cracked down on kid content, like any content that involved kids. So kid content, family content. I remember Special Books by Special Kids was hit. A lot of channels were hit in terms of AdSense because they had kids featured in them. And my understanding was that at the time, YouTube was trying to crack down and protect children, and in doing so, some of these channels were hit and affected. And I think that was the moment, and it was how Colleen handled that situation that just made me not like her. And we can get into a whole discussion about that, but that's not what anyone came here for, or that's not what most people who are watching this came here for. We want to know what I think about this apology. So I'm not going to go into super detail about what has been going on the past couple of weeks. There are a lot of drama channels and T channels that have reported on this and have reported on it thoroughly and well. And so feel free to go watch that, and hopefully you come back and see what I have to say, or you watch this and then go get more context by watching the full story. But in a nutshell, it has come out that a fan of Colleen's that is, I believe, still a teenager. It is a young man by the name of Adam. He does tell us in a video that at the time that he developed this personal friendship with Colleen, he was 13 years old. And at that time, Colleen was not only divulging information to this child about her messy divorce, but she also sent him lingerie that was, I think, used in a video or a live stream or something like that. And at the time, his parents were upset and took it away. I don't know why they continued to let him speak to her, but we'll come back to this in a second. And then these stories go on to tell you about how Adam was entrusted with, I believe, Miranda's socials, and at that time thought that he would create this like little mini campaign where Miranda comes out as a Meghan Trainor fan. And when that happened, a lot of people were upset at the queer baiting nature of this. And that it's happened before in Colleen's past. And what we learn from kind of this expose and the channels that are reporting on it, we learned that while these ideas were Adam's, Colleen signed off on them. And then when they came to be problematic is when Colleen backpedaled, blamed him, and didn't really take responsibility for what she approved, essentially. And there's a lot of other details, like I said. There are plenty of places to go watch that. And then, of course, because this is the nature of the internet and cancel culture, when some sort of scandal or controversy happens, then other things start to unearth. So there are a few things that I've seen floating around the internet that have made me feel some type of way, but I haven't, like I said, quite sat down to figure out what I think about all this. I did see a collection of tweets from Colleen over the time where she very casually uses the word kind of just like, oh, it's my friend's birthday, go him with love, and other casual usages of the word. I saw a video where she and her sister, I believe, played these characters that are Latina women, and this video essentially was just these two characters perpetuating these stereotypes of Hispanic women.
She works at the drive-thru at Del Taco. You know how the boys go loco.
And I caught a glimpse of it, and that's just what it was. They were the accents they were using, the way they were speaking, their makeup, the hoop earrings. I think there was just a lot of, there's no other way to put it, stereotypes rolled up into these characters. And then the other thing that I saw a couple of things, but some of it might have been fabricated, but this definitely wasn't. There was a video where Colleen is sitting down with, I thought it was her husband or her boyfriend or her baby daddy, but I don't know the status of her and her man, what they refer to their partnership as. Angelica Oles reported on this and referred to him as her friend, so I don't know if she knows better than me or I know better than her, but it doesn't matter who the guy is in the video. The point is that in this video, Colleen tells a story about how she murdered a dog as a child because she had an issue with her temper, and through a temper tantrum, essentially hurt their family dog by digging her nails into its fur and into its skin. And as the dog spun around and bit her on the face, she claimed to her parents that she didn't know why the dog bit her, and as such, they put the dog down as being a danger to her and their family and possibly other children. And this story is bothersome as it is, just to know that an innocent animal was put down because this child was not truthful about why it reacted the way that it did. But of course, you can only place so much blame on somebody for what they did when they were 5 years old, right? I think that's how old she said she was. My issue is the very last couple seconds of this video. As she's finishing her story, he says, "That's really sad." And her response is a very, very smug, "I know.
So I murdered a dog."
And that bothers the hell out of me. I 100% believe I could forgive you for what you did as a 5-year-old. But to be so brazen about telling the story about murdering a dog as a child and then just like, I know. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's going to be really hard for me to like Colleen after that, but we'll see. I'm going to watch her apology. I'm going to tell you guys legitimately what I think about what I'm assuming is going to be an apology, and what I think about all this after, but I will say that there's not a chance that I am going to like her after this. I may down the road, who knows? But I will try to be as fair as possible. You guys know that I have given the opportunity to YouTubers that I've been critical of to apologize and to make right of their wrongs. So I will do my best to do right by you guys and give her that opportunity. So jumping right in. Okay, so as far as this video of Colleen and her sister portraying these Latina women,
it is not funny and it is completely hurtful. I am so ashamed and embarrassed that I ever thought this was okay. I was a sheltered teenager who was stupid and ignorant and clearly extremely culturally insensitive.
I honestly am not that offended when I see comedy videos like this. We've seen characters like this in comedy a lot. Bear in mind, I am in my mid-30s, so I did grow up in a time when the comedy landscape was different than it is now. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but 10, 14 years ago, however many years ago, jokes like this I don't think were seen as insensitive as they are now. And the first example and the only example that initially comes to mind, although I'm sure that there were plenty of characters like this on In Living Color, SNL, shows like that. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Dee plays a character named Martina Martinez, and she is horribly racially insensitive with this character, and I think that's part of the humor.
All right, who the hell is this character that you're doing?
Oh, this one, it's a really great one. Her name's Martina Martinez, and she is a streetwise Puerto Rican girl who's always quick with a sassy comeback.
So it's kind of difficult in these situations to figure out, like with It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, would that fly today? Would people still laugh at that and recognize that part of the humor is recognizing how insensitive and ignorant Dee is being with this character? But I guess that kind of does put this Colleen situation into perspective when we're comparing it to Martina Martinez, for example. This isn't Colleen playing Miranda playing this girl, as far as we know, or these women. This is Colleen herself playing these characters. So yeah, I mean, unequivocally, this is racially insensitive. It is. Just because I don't personally get all that hurt by it doesn't mean that it is not that thing. I think I would be more offended if I knew for a fact that Colleen herself has any personal biases against Hispanic women. That matters more to me. For instance, in one of my recent videos, I talked about Shallon Lester and a comment she made about how if a girl calls you fat, all you have to do is make a remark about how at least my mom is not an illegal immigrant. At least if I call ICE on your mom, they'll pick you and your family up and take you back to whatever country you came from, something like that. Like, that's offensive. Even still, I can laugh at that because that woman is ridiculous. But this video of Colleen and her sister in and of itself, I don't get that worked up over, though I do think that there is a necessity to apologize for and address this. In terms of her apology for this, there's one little thing that I am gonna call BS on. And it is where Colleen says that she and her sister deleted this video or these videos a few years after they posted them, realizing that they were offensive, not because they were going to get caught, but because they might hurt somebody if somebody saw them. And I don't really buy that. Of course, you guys should know, when I say I don't buy that to something that a YouTuber does or says, this is all speculation. I'm not in these people's heads. I don't know their genuine intentions or what they're really feeling. And it is difficult, I know from personal experience, it is difficult when viewers speculate about your intentions but speak in such a manner as if they know what your intentions are. So recognize that I am not claiming to know what Colleen's intentions were. It just sounds like BS to me. It sounds like an easy way out to say I took these videos down because I didn't want to hurt anyone versus addressing it when you take them down. I think that is the bigger thing to do, and I think it's probably the more difficult thing to do, is to, when you realize that this is an issue and you decide to take them down, let your audience know what you're doing. Because we always hear, once something's on the internet, it's always on the internet. And we know this is true in this case, because even though they deleted those videos, they're still around. We can still watch them. So I just think that it looks better and is a better act in good faith to take these down, but to let your audience know that you are taking something down and why. So that if this issue comes up, you've already addressed it. You've addressed it bravely and with integrity. But that also requires opening yourself up to criticism as you do it. Whereas if you just kind of try to brush it under the rug, you can perhaps try to get away with it going unseen. So I think that's what happened here. As to whether or not she should be talking about racism and speaking against it despite her past, I do agree with her here that because she did something insensitive in the past does not mean that she shouldn't speak out against racism. Racism is bad. We should speak out against this bad thing that is racism. We've all done things that are bad. That doesn't mean that we should not speak out against those things that are bad, especially if we recognized that they are bad. And so I will stand with her here where she says that she did recognize a few years later that, hey, like, these videos are insensitive, let's take them down. That shows us that whether she had those ill intentions towards Hispanic women or not, she knew that the videos were bad. So I do give her license to speak out against these things. At least for me, she has my blessing and my permission to speak out against these things. And I'm sure this will come up again, but people are not going to change and grow if we do not allow them the space to change and grow after they make a mistake. So if in 14 years we have not allowed Colleen Ballinger to recognize her mistake and learn from it and then come forward to speak out against that very behavior that she perpetuated in the past, which some people could see as definitely even more so righting her wrongs than just an apology, because she is sort of kind of creating a positive footprint that may negate some of the negative footprint that the initial act left. It's a kind of checks and balances thing. So I'm getting too abstract about this, but bottom line, we should never tell somebody that because they made a mistake in the past, they are not allowed to speak on these issues ever again. I disagree with that. If that is how we're going to tell people they can or cannot behave, what is the point in even trying to learn and grow? That's a dangerous mindset to tell people that they can't do that they can't grow. Now, here she talks about some sort of video or post she made where she talked about an overweight woman who sat next to her on a plane.
I watched this clip and I was appalled and shocked that those things were coming out of my mouth 12 years ago, because that is not the woman who I am today.
I don't have a lot to say about that situation because I didn't know about it. She's addressing something ugly she said that was definitely ugly, unequivocally. But I don't have anything else to add to that, but I don't want anybody in my comments saying that I glossed over or ignored that part. So I'm not very happy with how she addressed the whole dog issue.
In this clip, I talk about the story in a very dramatic, silly way, because sometimes, unfortunately, I use humor to talk about things that are actually extremely painful for me.
She gave us a little more context in saying that perhaps this was more of a legal issue than that one video told us, that perhaps she has felt guiltier and sadder about this than that video showed us. But I don't like this whole sometimes I use comedy to talk about really difficult things excuse. It's an excuse. I don't like that. I would have preferred that she just said, this one video is not representative of how I actually felt. I see why it hurt you. I am sorry for that. And leave it at that. We've got to be careful with how and when we pull the comedy card. When you made that video with your sister about Hispanic women, I believe that that was made for the sake of comedy. I don't necessarily believe that that was made for the sake of racism. Again, not in your head, so I don't know, but I believe that that was made in the name of comedy. Do I believe that you were making this video and acting this way and speaking about this dog and acting smug about this dog in the name of comedy to deal with your trauma around that situation? No, I don't know. I don't believe that. Somebody who is sensitive about these matters, somebody who genuinely feels bad for being responsible for the death of a family pet, and somebody who is smart at all. And I can tell that she is a smart woman would know just not to act that way. Just don't act that way. What else is there to say? She should have just said she was sorry. She should have said that this is not representative of how she actually felt. Who knows why she acted that way, but sorry. And I don't think people need any more context than that. I think in this situation, we just needed an apology.
Hi, you have ugly clothes, but I want those ratchet panties and bras signed by Corey because he modeled them well.
Yeah! It was so ridiculous and funny, we laughed about it, and I forgot to send them to him. And I've always given out weird random things in live streams. I've given out a taco costume, I've given out old bobby pins, dirty shoes. A few weeks ago, I sent a fan like a single piece of toilet paper. I've always given away weird stuff. And so in my mind at the time, this was no different than all the other weird stuff I send to my fans as a joke. Now, in hindsight, I see how completely stupid of me. I should have never sent that. I don't know what part of my brain was missing at the time that I thought, oh, this is a normal, silly thing to do. I should have realized and recognized how dumb that was and never sent it to him, no matter how much he asked.
I have mixed feelings about her apology around this. I will say at this point, I am a little over halfway through this video, and she is giving these explanations and apologies very frantically. And I know some people are going to say that it's not my place to try to tell people what sorts of emotions they should display in these types of videos. I don't think there's anything wrong with showing emotion in apology videos. I think showing some is a good thing. My issue is that she seems frantic. And we know that when we are frantic, and as we say on my channel, like going limbic, it is sort of a way of pitting yourself against somebody else. So that almost makes me feel like I have to be on guard too, instead of kind of having a conversation with her or being on this end of a conversation where she is simply giving us context. I hope that makes sense to some people. So the way she is kind of frantically explaining almost makes her look even guiltier. That said, she gives us more context because she says that this whole lingerie situation needs more context. And I suppose maybe for some people it did. I never thought that this was a situation where she was like sending sexy lingerie to this kid after she's like worn it, or in any sort of manner that sexualizes a minor. I never took it to be that. I think it was mentioned that these were unused and that it was used on a live stream. So this context didn't really do anything for me. It didn't do anything for me. I don't think it really helped the argument for people like me who said that this is just wildly inappropriate. Now, she does say after she gives that context that now she's looking back and realizes how dumb that was to think that that would be appropriate at all. So perhaps some people needed this context and maybe it was a good thing that she gave it. But I think at the end of the day, it is just, hey, I didn't send it in that way. It was just something silly that we were doing, but now I realize how wildly inappropriate it was to send that to a child. And I guess more or less that is what she said here. I just think that I didn't like that she says that this was being blown out of proportion, because while people might misread the situation, I don't think it's her place to say how proportionate people's anger is to her behavior of sending a child underwear. She admitted that it was a wildly stupid and inappropriate thing. So I don't know that it's fair to say that anyone is blowing that out of proportion. I am happy to see that she is recognizing that that is wildly inappropriate and there's nothing else to it. I think that that needed to be addressed. I don't necessarily think that Colleen is one of these Onision, Davi Vanity, Shallon Lester types. I don't necessarily think that she is one of those, but I was concerned about this behavior that is so consistent with a lot of other concerning behavior we're seeing on the platform. So yeah, I need these YouTubers to address these things right away, and to recognize when they've done something wildly inappropriate, and if they need to give us a little bit of context to do so. I'm glad she recognized it as inappropriate. I feel meh about her over-explaining herself, but at the same time, I am somebody who tends to like over-explain in general. So I'm going to try to extend a little bit of compassion there with this situation. It was stupid. I believe that it was just stupid on her part and that there was probably not much more to it. She says here that there is some sort of misunderstanding where Adam's mom is uncomfortable with her being friends with him.
Which was surprising and shocking for me to hear, because I was always under the impression, due to the things he told me and the things that I saw on the internet, that she not only was aware of our interactions, but she was very supportive of him being a fan of mine.
Yeah, this doesn't really do anything for me. It's nothing that I was concerned about, nor does it seem like that big of a deal. Maybe just a miscommunication or a misunderstanding, or a lie that someone told somewhere that I don't really care about.
I love hiring my fans for many reasons. One, they're super freaking talented. Two, they know me better than anybody. And three, I love supporting their dreams and passions in any way that I can.
Okay, I think I'm probably like halfway or partway through the explanation of the whole Adam running her social media, or Miranda's social medias accounts thing. But here she's really talking a lot about how she does hire her fans and the reasons for that and the process by which she goes about that. And it sounds as if she's defending herself in some way, and perhaps this is me being out of the loop and having not heard this criticism. I know that some people have said like, hey, this kid did these things, it didn't go well, and she has denied him the opportunity to have this job despite the fact that he didn't do anything wrong necessarily, considering she signed off on everything. So I don't know if maybe that's what she's speaking to here. I don't think I've heard anyone criticize her for hiring her fans in general. I don't know if that's something YouTubers really get criticized for at all. Maybe you guys can tell me a little bit more about whether or not this has happened. But as far as I know, and I personally don't have any issue with Colleen hiring her fans, nor have I heard anybody else take issue with that. So I'm a little confused as to why she sounds so defensive about that aspect of the story. But I'll continue watching, see if there's anything else that pops up.
I put zero blame on him at all. It was my fault. I knew better than to let someone else tweet for me. I should have reviewed closely every single thing that was going to come out of Miranda's mouth. I let him know that I loved him. He did a great job. It was my fault, not his. I publicly apologized for the tweet.
So this is interesting. Her account of this story is different from what I've heard. What I've heard, and as far as I know is kind of Adam's side of the story, is that Colleen expressed disappointment in Adam after this Miranda coming out tweet was an issue, that she expressed disappointment in Adam and then didn't want to work with him moving forward, that she didn't necessarily take responsibility for this in their conversation. She may have taken responsibility for it publicly, but the way this Adam story came out made it sound like Colleen did not take responsibility for the fact that she co-signed these things, and really kind of made it seem like this was Adam's issue. So I believe that she perhaps just did not look over these things. If she didn't have time to run the social media accounts for Miranda Sings, then I believe that she probably hastily approved any social media posts that may be going up. So I do believe her. If she says, I was rushed, I didn't pay attention, I approved things that I didn't really look at closely, I believe her, as long as she does what she did here, which was say, I take full responsibility. That is my fault. She says that she told him that she loved him, that she wasn't disappointed in him, that this was her fault. So because that is a departure from everything that I've heard about the situation coming from Adam's side, this is one of those things where I'm at an impasse. Who do you believe? My gut is telling me that Colleen is being truthful here. Of course, what do I have to go based on that besides my gut? It is largely her tone. It is definitely what should have happened in that situation. And maybe because she's not over explaining this one, but I do believe her. Now it could this could go any way. After people start reviewing this apology and, Adam responds and all of that, we'll see what comes out of it. But I find this interesting. This might change how I look at this whole situation.
I definitely overshare, and I have definitely overshared with fans when they have asked me what's wrong or asked me how I'm feeling or try to console me when I'm feeling down. I definitely have overshared in the past with them and talked with them a little too much when I should have kept things to myself or talked to family or close friends instead.
Here she talks about oversharing, and without speaking directly to why she's talking about oversharing, we can deduce that she's talking about the situation where she talked to Adam about her divorce. And we've seen a situation similar to this in recent months, or probably more like 6 months ago. What is time these days? But with Gabby Hanna in DMs with a fan or a former fan or one of each, we've seen YouTubers get way too personal in DMs with fans and divulging information they should not. And perhaps just because they have gotten into a conversation and they just feel a sense of comfort and maybe take it too far. I get that can happen. Sometimes it happens to me with my platform of 24K subs. Sometimes it happens to me that I will just be lying in my bed at night and I get caught up in a conversation in one of my DMs, and sometimes people will be amazed that I respond to them, and that kind of, I don't want to say it snaps me back into reality, or perhaps it snaps me into what is my reality that I didn't know was reality, but the reality is that these people who are watching you as a YouTuber have a certain relationship with you that you don't have with them. And so when people are surprised that I am responding to them or paying more attention to them than they would have expected, that makes me stop and think, not necessarily that it's a bad thing to be talking to my followers, but it makes me mindful of how personal I am getting with them. And sure, I could say that, Gabby Hanna and Colleen Ballinger and anybody else who's done this, they're all human, and it is super easy to make this mistake. My concern is that I've been doing this, and I'm not saying like, oh, I've been doing this, so you should be able to do it. But I know a lot of people have been saying stuff like that. I'm just saying that I don't think I'm any more mindful or smart or careful than somebody like Colleen Ballinger is capable of being. So that's what I'm saying when I say that me, 3 or so months into this, taking the time to look at my DMs and contemplate how personal is too personal. Definitely it's easy to get very personal with one of your followers who you've started to see as a friend. I'm never going to begrudge anyone for making a friend out of a fan or a follower. You guys have seen that I have started a podcast with somebody who was initially a viewer of one of my videos. I've created an emotional support group where I have come to feel like I'm friends with some of these people, and my patrons, I have come to feel very close to those of you who've decided to make this small community with me. And then in particular, my mods. I have a group of about 4 or 5 mods, and I do feel comfortable opening up about a lot of things to these people. However, I am very mindful of the fact that these people are adults. There's one of my mods is 16 or 17 and she's in England. I love you, girl. But even still, we're not talking about anything inappropriate. I do have one fan, I guess you could say, that is 10 years old that I do address in live streams and stuff like that. I just could not imagine going into details about family life and relationship drama and anything akin to divorce with a child that way. I think when it comes down to it, some of these YouTubers are not being mindful of how personal they should or should not be getting with young fans. That's just it. We saw that with Gabby Hanna with a 15-year-old, and there's a reason people took issue with it. Now it's happening with Colleen Ballinger, or it's coming to light that it happened with Colleen Ballinger and a 13-year-old. And there's a reason people take issue with it. The only reason that I bring myself into this situation as a comparison, I also bring Gabby Hanna in as a comparison, but because I can only speak to what it actually feels like at this level, at 24K, and what it was like at 10K and 20K. So I'm not claiming to be a better person. I just don't understand how this is something I could have thought of at this point. And at 3 million subscribers, Colleen didn't think about this, or however many subscribers she had 4 years ago, which was probably still in the millions, why she was not thinking about this. She had to have had so many fans at that time that were willing to talk to her about all these things. I just don't know why she opened up to a 13-year-old. When you recognize a child as somebody you are willing to forge this line of communication with, it is not that difficult to say, okay, I'm going to be friends with Adam. Adam is 13, so I need to make sure that I am placing some boundaries here and that it is my responsibility as the adult to enforce those boundaries and to also be very open, particularly with his parents, about the nature of this relationship. I don't know. I don't know how much his parents knew about their relationship. And at the same time, I'm not sure how well his parents handled this relationship. But anyway, you cut it, as a public figure, when you decide to forge these personal relationships with your fans, it is your place to assess what kind of relationship that needs to be. And when you're dealing with a child, that is where you need to make sure that you are enforcing your own very necessary boundaries within that friendship. And Colleen failed to do so. So it's not just a matter of being an oversharer. I'm an oversharer. I sure hope that I would not do something like this, but because I am an imperfect person, I'm not going to say that I'll never do something of this magnitude. So I would really hope that if I did do something of this magnitude, that I would hold myself accountable and just apologize and not make excuses because I'm an oversharer. So you're the adult. You define those boundaries in that relationship. You enforce them. When you fail to enforce them and when you yourself overstep those boundaries, you take responsibility for that and you don't make excuses for it. And that's it. There's nothing else to it.
But over the last month, I've received a lot of criticism that isn't the type of constructive criticism I've received over the last decade. It is more just hateful and cruel, and the things that are being said about me are absolutely horrendous.
Okay, Colleen has explained to us that she is sorry for the mistakes she's made, that she has grown, that she's continuing to grow, and essentially allowing her audience to hold her accountable to certain standards of behavior. But also stating that some of the comments thrown her way have been over the top, mean, hateful, threatening, etc. And the reason I cringe, the reason I say, ugh, is because I know people are going to take issue with this. And I personally don't know where I stand exactly because I've been in this situation in my very short time here on YouTube where I have said I am sorry for doing this thing, but hey, to some of you guys who are saying really terrible things to me, please stop. And a lot of people don't like that. And I get it. Apologies. I've said before, apologies should not be about you. Apologies are about the other person that you've hurt. At the same time, I've also said to you guys, my commitment to you is to hold myself accountable, to allow you guys to hold me accountable, and to own up to my behavior. My commitment to myself is to define those boundaries and to tell you when you've crossed those boundaries. And I sure would hope that all of my subscribers do that for themselves in their lives. She's going to get a lot of flack for this. I already know she's going to get a lot of flack for essentially sticking up for herself within her apology. I agree, people should not tell her to off herself, that people are using words that are harmful and unrepresentative of who she probably is as a person. I just wonder if we as YouTubers should express those messages in conjunction with each other in one video. I don't see the point in making two separate videos or two separate posts. One where the YouTuber apologizes for behavior and then another one where they say, hey, by the way, these things that some of you are saying are crossing my boundaries. that doesn't seem all that feasible. This is just a really sticky situation, I think. I understand where she's coming from. I think Colleen Ballinger and anybody else on the YouTube platform has a right to stick up for themselves, especially when they are being attacked and abused. I think it is important to make a distinction that when you are speaking out against those hateful remarks and bullying behavior, I think it is important to make the distinction that I am only speaking, and when I say I mean like the YouTuber apologizing. I am only speaking to a select few people that have addressed me. And to those of you, the example that I've used a couple of times is like, if I'm apologizing for something, but some people who are angry are throwing baseballs through my window, am I allowed to say, hey guys, I'm sorry for this thing, but please stop throwing baseballs through my window? I think a person should be allowed. Just because a YouTuber needs to make an apology doesn't mean they need to be a martyr, and doesn't mean that they need to lay down and be dragged through the mud and be told whatever nasty, hurtful, hateful things people want to throw their way. We know that people don't behave themselves on the internet and in comment sections. We know this. We know that YouTubers are held to a standard that is so much higher than anybody who's leaving a comment in a comment section. And that's not anybody's fault, because being a YouTuber comes with its perks too. But I do think we're taking it too far when we tell YouTubers that they are not allowed to be human enough to feel when people are saying things that are beyond hateful, and when we tell them that they can't delineate those boundaries for us. So I personally do not take issue with Colleen saying these things about some of the hate she's getting. I know that some of the internet is going to take issue with it, so I am concerned about what that's going to look like. I do think personally the best way that I would go about handling this is to say, hey, I'm not talking to all of you. I'm not even talking to most of you. There are just some people that I'm asking to please stop doing these things. And I sure hope that whether you agree or disagree, that is something you can at least understand where I'm coming from, because I'm doing my best to understand all sides of this situation and all the different perspectives people have in these sorts of situations. So that's personally where I stand. All right, so that was all of Colleen's apology. And I will say, overall, just like I did with Gabby, it's not a perfect apology, but overall, I am happy that she addressed these issues. Of course, her explanations did not make all of these things right for me. Of course they wouldn't. But she did address everything, just like I said about Gabby. She addressed everything very comprehensively, very thoroughly. My only issue is just kind of how, like I said, how frantic she seems to be coming across to the audience, which almost seems combative a little bit, just a little. And I'm sure that that wasn't her intention, but that is just the feeling that one gets when you talk to them in this way, and you're kind of heightened and sometimes over-explanatory and almost barking. It can put somebody on guard. So the content of her words, the content of her apology, I appreciate her addressing everything as comprehensively as she did. I do appreciate her just outright saying that she is sorry for these things. She is sorry to those of us who may have been hurt by her actions and her words, especially at a time like this. I think if she could have softened her tone just a little so it didn't sound so combative and gave fewer excuses for herself, I would have been a lot happier with this apology. But I will say, in terms of how I felt at the beginning of this video to now, I have a little more respect for Colleen Ballinger, and I have no idea how that's going to go down on the internet for me. But I do respect this apology. I think that there is a gaping hole in this situation, which is, how did she treat Adam after the Miranda Sings queerbaiting scandal? He says one thing, she says something entirely different. So I'm really curious as to where the truth lies. Is it on his side? Is it on hers? Or is it somewhere in between? I'd be curious to know more about that. So I probably will be following this to see what comes out of it. I am glad that she addressed the lingerie thing, even though I wasn't entirely happy with her response. I am glad that she addressed it and recognized it as wildly inappropriate. Whether or not I agree that that rights the wrong or not, at least I know that's one fewer person I need to worry about that's out on the YouTube platform thinking that behavior like that is okay. And like I said in a recent video, we will be talking more about this on my channel because it is something I'm very concerned about right now. And that is what initially caught my attention about this whole Colleen Ballinger situation, was the fact that she was sending underwear to a 13-year-old. I think the rest could have just been noise, but the moment that I heard that was when my attention was caught and when I started following the situation. Not perfect, but I appreciate this apology. I do. Not that it was made for me necessarily, but just in terms of rating apologies or analyzing apologies, it's such a strange thing, and is something that I have been criticized for doing with Gabby's apology, even though I was very complimentary to her. I do think that if we're going to analyze YouTubers' behaviors, I think we should analyze their apologies and determine whether or not it is good. It teaches us a lot about how to apologize. It's something I've thought about doing on my channel before, is like kind of how I've done the History of Scandals and Controversies series. I've thought about actually analyzing YouTuber apologies. What makes them good? What makes them bad? What could make them better? And it's just funny that some people think that we shouldn't do this. At the end of the day, I do believe that we need to grant a little bit of sympathy, empathy, compassion, whatever you want to call it, towards the person who is willing to apologize, and recognize that they are doing something that's very difficult for them. And however well or poorly they do it, it does require a level of humility to do it. So I do want to give credit to those YouTubers who are willing to apologize, whether their apologies are good or bad. But I do think it's important that we have these conversations about how an apology makes us feel, because it teaches us how to communicate with each other. And I am saying that as somebody who's been criticized for how she's apologized. I have made an apology before, and I've had some people happy with that apology. I've had some people unhappy with that apology, and I've had conversations around this. I'm still having this conversation around this. I'm still learning. And this is me kind of working through that for myself as well. I hope this goes to speak to that I recognize how important an apology is. I think that there are different kinds of apologies. I think sometimes a YouTuber makes an honest mistake, just like Gabby did with the Bianca Devin situation. As far as I know, the example of Jenna Marbles and her fish tank, I think she made a legitimate mistake. There are legitimate mistakes that sometimes we as creators make, and there is, a certain kind of apology that should come out of that. There are certain apologies that are for very awful and terrible and mean-spirited and malicious acts, and I think those are the apologies where that YouTuber really needs to make sure that they are not blaming their audience for anything. So say someone like Trisha Paytas were to come forward and make an apology. I think I heard somewhere that she might have. But Trisha Paytas coming forward and apologizing for all of the trolling, all of the offensive behavior that has gone on this year because of the amount of hurt that she has caused, I think it would be less appropriate for her to come on camera and talk about how all of this has made her feel. For somebody who's made a legitimate mistake, I think that that's a little different. I understand that not everybody sees it that way. So, I don't know. I say we continue having this conversation. I'm curious as to what you guys think about Colleen's apology, apologies in general, what we should, what we shouldn't do. And did this make you feel any different than you did before? I feel differently than I did at the very beginning of this video. And this is getting the gears turning again for me about apologies and how they should be made. And I know that I'm not perfect yet. I know that I have not given a perfect apology, and I'm letting you guys know that I know that. But the more we have these conversations, the better we get at these skills, at these life skills that are so important, and skills that as adults, I think sometimes we forget how to employ. So Already, I'm getting into the discussion I know we're going to have in the comments. So to you, the one person who stayed to the end, who's still watching, who's not me, thank you so much for coming back and watching this whole video. I want to know what you guys think, what you thought of Colleen before this, what you think about her now, what you thought about this apology and apologies in general. So I will have that conversation with you guys down in the comments. Bye.